Welcome to The Intersection, a series on the IQT Podcast where we discuss topics relating to the intersection of technology and national security. Today, we're going to discuss the nexus of AI and quantum technology and how it can address some of the world's most challenging problems. Our guest today is Jack Hidary, CEO of SandBoxAQ, which is an IQT portfolio company. Jack is a serial entrepreneur and co-founder of several tech companies, including Earthweb, Dice, and Vista Research. Jack is also the author of Quantum Computing, an Applied Approach, which is one of the leading textbooks in the field. Jack, thank you for joining us at The Intersection today.
Steve, it's great to be with you.
So, to set the stage for what we're going to talk about here today, why don't you share a little bit of your background and what led you to where you are today?
Well, it's always been a dream of mine, Steve, to bring together different disciplines. Too often we find in academia in particular that disciplines are departmentalized, literally, and never the twain shall meet. What I found early in my educational career initially, and then in building businesses, and then ultimately joining Google, is that we can actually bring these disciplines together. I had studied computer programming and coding since I was a kid and really loved that. I had then picked up a very strong interest in neuroscience and AI. The two obviously are deeply connected back from the early days and even now, and then a deep passion for physics as well. I had combined all those in my various studies and educational areas, and it was always a dream to bring these disciplines together. Can we understand how to bring advanced computing, physics, and other disciplines together to have really strong global impact and positive impact on society? And it took a while because when I first started having these dreams, Steve, we didn't have the compute power as humans to make this happen. And so to see the rise of compute power, I'm sure today we'll be discussing both GPUs, QPUs, lots of other compute power. Now, finally, the dream is becoming true.
Yeah. And what's the benefit of bringing both or multi-disciplines together here as opposed to just focusing on the software, just focusing on the hardware?
Yeah, well, I think it's exciting because the problems themselves are not restricting themselves to one silo. And so when you think about a problem such as clean energy and making better batteries, both for electric vehicles, but also even bigger impact will ultimately be stationary batteries for large scale buildings, as well as fields of batteries for storage on the grid. When we think about pharma, when we think about taking a molecule, making it into a medicine, these large societal challenges that we have do not neatly and conveniently restrict themselves to one discipline. They demand the tool sets of different disciplines coming together. Specifically, just to give one example, in pharma, in drug development and biotech, we have a major challenge in front of us. The average time, Steve, as you well know, that it takes to get from molecule to medicine is 13 years. The average money, $2.5 to $3 billion. The average failure rate, 70% failure. So that is a major challenge. And the reason why we as a society do not have the medical treatments we want to have today for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, brain cancer, pancreatic cancer, and others as well. These demand different disciplines coming together to address them.
Okay. So you convinced me of the benefit of bringing the different disciplines together. But that makes it a more complex challenge to accomplish. You need to build a more complex or disparate skilled organization to accomplish this. And all this started out within Google. So tell us what you were challenged to do at Google and what you guys started doing there, and then about your decision to spin out and leave Google.
Sure. One of the beautiful things about Alphabet specifically, the founders had set up Alphabet as a superstructure to both own Google, but also to start new out-of-the-box ideas and ultimately spin them out. And one of the beauties of Alphabet is the freedom to really explore tabula rasa, all kinds of new ideas and bring together disciplines. One of the things that my group and I did at that time in Alphabet is to bring in leading physicists into the picture, bring in AI folks, build an AI group, build all this stuff. Because it was in the context of Alphabet and not in academia, we actually had a much easier time of doing that. The traditional walls between departments did not stop us. And so that was an initial early success that we had in SandBox when we were inside of Alphabet. As we began to develop real product and real impact in these various areas, be it in cyber or be it in biopharma or other applications in quantum sensing that I'm sure we'll get to, we realized that it was time to spin this platform out. It was time to really have a dedicated resource pool of capital, to have an independent equity instrument to attract the best and brightest, and also to be neutral in terms of embracing different chipsets. When we were inside Alphabet, we used a wonderful chipset in the TPU, the tensor processing unit, very advanced chipset. But it was also important from a customer-centric point of view to respond to their need to use other chipsets as well, and also to respond to the different quantum computers that were being developed by many different entities, both venture-backed startups, large tech, academics, and others. So for all those reasons, about a year and a half ago, we then initiated the spin out and spun out in March of last year.
And how many people came with you?
At that time, we were several dozen people, but now we've hit the 125 mark, and 2/3 of our folks are PhDs. The remaining are mainly engineers beyond the initial core set of PhDs. And these are PhDs, Steve, that will not surprise you, in physics, in chemistry, mathematics, cryptography, cyber, AI, and many other disciplines. And Steve, maybe just also to throw a question back at you, since you and I have interacted so much, I find that In-Q-Tel, and we welcomed In-Q-Tel initially as a partner and then investor, you also have quite a few disciplines represented inside In-Q-Tel. Why was that important? You've been at In-Q-Tel now, I think, 17, 18 years, and now congrats, you just took on the role of CEO, so congrats on that. But tell me about how that reflects in the kind of teams you've built at In-Q-Tel.
Absolutely, and thank you for those comments, first of all. To your point, at the end of the day, the customer agencies that we work with, they don't value technology for technology's sake. They value solutions. They value capabilities that we deliver in partnership with the portfolio companies that we invest in that allow them to accomplish mission opportunities. In the best solutions are, I think, multidisciplined in orientation. They have hardware and software capabilities, and they allow, when you have different technologies brought together, they allow a more complex, holistic approach to whatever problem or objective the agency is trying to address. In the multidisciplined approach of the solutions that we bring, sometimes we even end up helping our customer agencies integrate multiple products from different portfolio companies together to provide one solution, one capability that allows them to better collect intelligence, surveil adversaries, and ultimately make policy recommendations through finished intelligence products to the government customers that they serve.
Yeah, so I think.
Sorry, no. Go.
Yeah, just to pick up on that, through our interactions with In-Q-Tel and others, it just is one example of what we're talking about. We were with an arm of the DoD just yesterday, and not to go into details here, but in general, national defense requires the use of frontier technologies, and I think that's been the mantra that we've heard from In-Q-Tel and the partnership that we've had, but also what we're hearing now more and more from other parts of the IC and the DoD and more broadly national defense and allies. People are now recognizing that, for example, material science. If you want to build devices that have certain properties, and all you do is go back to the same materials that we've used for the past 20, 30 years, you will get the same results of the past 20, 30 years. And what we're seeing in Ukraine is very, very interesting. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned in the conflict, from the conflict in Ukraine, and in our support of Ukraine to defend itself. Certain technologies that we thought would work very well are working, others are not. Drones, for example, that we did not focus on as much. When I talk about drones, not just the very large Predator class drones, much small form factor drones. What we're finding is electronic warfare is far more important, and electronic defense from EW is far more important than we may have initially imagined, where even if you have thousands of drones heading to the battlefront, most of those will probably be downed by electronic warfare. Thinking about technologies that can navigate in a GPS-denied environment has become much more urgent on the part of the U.S. and its allies as we see Russia jamming over Ukraine. We see other countries, other nation states jamming GPS over large swaths of key regional areas that are of great strategic interest to the U.S., the Five Eyes, and its allies. What do we do in the face of GPS denial? And people sometimes have then moved to GNSS, a global navigation system, trying to pull from satellites from multiple constellations, but even those now have been jammed. And so what do we do? And so these challenges that are coming right in front of us from a national security and defense point of view, I think call for the use of frontier technology much more quickly, Steve, much more urgently. And I don't know what you're seeing, comparing notes with yourself at In-Q-Tel and your team, but you may be finding the same thing.
No, absolutely. We have over 25 companies that are contributing technology from our portfolio into the conflict in Ukraine. And what we're seeing is it's kind of a hacker conflict, right? There's certainly there's the role for certain traditional technologies, and munitions has been a big issue that, I think the DoD has been publicly out there about the need for us to continue to manufacture and build certain munitions to supply the Ukraine forces with. But at the same time, what you're hearing over and over again is, this technology didn't work the way it was envisioned in the design shop or in various military exercises. Now that we're out in the field, we're learning things about this is how people jam, this is how people counteract what we're trying to do, and here's the hack that we figured out to respond to that. So it's a class or almost makerspace type conflict here, where everyone's deploying technology, learning from the interactions, and coming back and making modifications to it. And the small startup company that has been developing frontier technology, your point, is better positioned to that than some of the large defense primes who have a much longer design cycle, and the idea of making quick modifications to their technology to adapt to the environment that's out there is a little bit more challenging for them.
Yeah. So, see, maybe it's a good. I know that before our call we talked about getting into navigation and navigation denied environment. So maybe this is a good moment for us to jump into that. So maybe
tell us about what you guys are doing there, because I know what you're doing is very interesting.
Yeah. So and we've all partnered around this because it's such an urgent issue, both in the conflict in Ukraine, but also globally. And when we've designed, be it jet fighters or ships or land-based vehicles, it was always with the assumption that GPS would be there for us. In fact, it's now very apparent that GPS is very easy to deny. In fact, you can go online and one can find a $500 to $700 device. It looks like a large walkie-talkie. If one buys that, you can then jam GPS in an entire area. And the adversaries, of course, are making use of that technology to very easily jam and even spoof GPS, even more dangerously, not letting you know that there's no GPS, but in fact giving you a different GPS signal that can send a jet fighter off course. If you're now in the Pacific Ocean with no real landmarks, you can easily find yourself out of fuel, and that is a very dangerous situation, both in the security context, national security context, but also, and Steve, this is a topic you and I have always discussed, dual use, in the civilian context. Just recently, 2 Qantas Airlines passenger jets full of passengers on March 14th of this year were denied GPS in international waters by a nation state. And so this becomes of great concern, both in civilian aerospace as well as national security and national defense. And so what can be done about this? And what we realized in SandBoxAQ a number of years ago is that we can bring A and Q together, AI and quantum together, to address this issue. You would need quantum, of course, because one thing we can be inspired by in a biomimicry sense is the way that birds migrate and the way that whales navigate as well. They both use the magnetic fields of the Earth. Birds, in fact, have quite a few other modalities they use when visual cues are available, but they always also bring in a modality of navigation with the Earth's magnetic lines. And what we now have realized over the last number of years is that if you have a magnetic map of the Earth, each spot on the Earth actually has a unique fingerprint, magnetic fingerprint, the way that our fingers have a unique mark as well. And what we built at SandBoxAQ is a full stack where we have the sensor sensing the magnetic field underneath the vehicle, be it land, sea, or air. We have a GPU in the box that can easily process that magnetic image and then compare it to the map that it has stored in its brain. And then we have AI, and this is very, very critical, Steve, that you know of, to pull the signal from the noise. These quantum sensors are wonderful, but they're so sensitive that they can pick up the iPhone that's just a few meters away as well. And so pulling out the signal from the noise is a great job for machine learning and AI. So this is an example where quantum sensors, which are here today, we don't need error correction, we don't need scaling to millions of qubits the way we have to do in quantum computing. These are solid state devices that are here today and can be used today in mission critical contexts. Coupling that with these GPUs, these graphical processing units that have become the mainstay of AI processing and also image enhancement and processing, couple that with an AI model that we train on the appropriate data. That full stack allows for this kind of navigation, and we can now talk about it publicly. The Air Force announced that our device was placed on a C-17 Globemaster, not only across the U.S., but also in 2 or 3 contexts in a recent mission exercise in the Indo-PACOM or Pacific region. And so the successful run of these tests demonstrates that AI and quantum together can make magnetic navigation a reality. This is a technology that does not communicate with any satellite, has no jammability because there's nothing to jam. There's no ability to find a frequency to jam. And so gives that countermeasure, the key countermeasure to GPS denial that we need.
And this is an example, correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, of something that couldn't be done just with quantum or just with AI. It was the bringing together of the two disciplines that enabled your company to deliver this product that can be both positive for the military and defense uses, but it can also be used in the commercial setting as well.
That's absolutely correct. What we're seeing is that AI is really good when you have a large amount of data to train on. Quantum is really good when you want to sense things you couldn't sense before, compute things you couldn't compute before. They each have their strengths that the other does not bring to the table. And bringing the two together, I think, is rather critical. And maybe it's a good time now to discuss the new kinds of chips that we're seeing out there, the GPUs, and how that enables a new arena.
But that's been the key enabling breakthrough on a technology to allow you to do what you're doing, right? It's been the advances on both the hardware side and the software side.
That's correct. Yeah, on the hardware side, we've taken the academic work on quantum sensors that was very strong and built over a 15, 20-year period, but applied for the first time engineering to that academic work to make it a mission critical device that can be put under mission circumstances. Again, that mission could be national defense in nature, or it could also be, of course, the mission of flying passengers safely in the civilian aerospace, which is a piece of critical infrastructure that the world our global economy would collapse without. And we saw that happen, of course, initially in the pandemic. So it's very important to have safety, both for civilian aerospace as well as for the national defense. And these chips, these GPUs that, of course, were initially designed to help video game graphics. And every time I see someone playing video games, if any teenagers around, I thank them for the video game playing because they drove the innovation in GPUs that we have today. And of course, many companies such as NVIDIA, Alphabet, Amazon, Tesla, so many companies now producing really wonderful chips that what we realize as a community, Steve, we can use the mathematics in these chips, this matrix algebra that was so essential to the firmware of these chips, the design of these chips, that we can then use that and translate that initially to neural networks, the brain inspired, the neuroscience inspired networks that led to deep learning, that led to transformers, that led to the LLMs of today and other applications, and also now led to simulation. And that's a critical topic, Steve. If I can make one prediction here with you today, it's that as much as generative AI and LLMs and GPTs are the buzzword of this moment, let me share a prediction with the audience here that we have, which is that in a number of years from now, but not too far in the distance, the word simulation will be as much of a buzzword as generative AI, because when we can simulate using a digital twin of an object, be it a molecule, be it a new material, be it a complex high-dimensional risk analysis in financial services, or in the theater of war, simulation will have such a great impact that it will be a key tool in tool chest right alongside generative AI and other tools as well.
And now you're doing something in the simulation area with biopharma community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we can now talk about that. We kept that in stealth for some time, but now that we have so many proof points with real molecules and real biologics that can impact human conditions, we can now talk about that more publicly. And so specifically, what we realized, and we mentioned this at the top of this podcast, that it's so difficult to get a molecule to become a medicine, so many challenges, and basically it's littered with failure, more failure. About 70, 80% of these drug candidates fail in clinical trials. And 40% of that failure, Steve, which is really alarming, 40% of that failure is in phase 3. And to remind ourselves, phase 1 is a small study for safety, phase 2, a slightly larger study for efficacy, and phase 3 is the scale up. That's where we have thousands and thousands of people. And to fail in phase 3, as 40% of these drug candidates do, is not only costly from a monetary point of view, but costly from a societal point of view, in that we don't get those drugs after all that work. So what we realized, Steve, is that we can combine the ideas of simulation and we can use GPUs. And this bucked conventional wisdom, because conventional wisdom was that we'd have to wait to a scaled, error-corrected, fault-tolerant quantum computer to do this kind of simulation. And indeed, when quantum computers are scaled, and we are working hard with all the partners we have building quantum computers, we're working hard to help those companies. We want that to happen. But what we realize is we can actually take the dimensionality of the problem down by quite a few notches and focus on, say, the business end, the electrons at the outer edge of a certain molecule as it's interfacing with a receptor in the body. And we could actually do that calculation at scale on large arrays of GPUs, not the GPUs of 5 to 10 years ago, but only starting 2021, basically just in the last 2 years, we could actually do this at scale with meaningful, pharmaceutically relevant molecules and biologics. And that's indeed what we've now done at UCSF with that medical center and a Nobel Prize winning lab there, and now doing with pharma companies and biotech companies around the world. So this is a breakthrough, Steve, that both required bucking conventional wisdom and also a lot of innovation on both the AI and the quantum techniques that we use on GPUs.
And I want to put stomp one of the points that you made there, which is there's true value today being delivered by companies like yours that are using quantum techniques, even though we're not quite there yet on the sort of perfectly theoretical quantum computer, right? There are still companies out there working hard to deliver that. That will come at some point. None of us are exactly sure when. Maybe you have an opinion on that. But even before that, taking quantum techniques in different areas, whether it's sensing for navigation or simulation here for biopharma, there's true value being delivered today by companies like SandBox here.
And what we'd love to see, Steve, and you know, we talked about this, and our teams have talked about this. How can we take these simulation techniques and now move it to other adjacent key areas of impact, both for national defense and for the civilian sector? So examples that we could just highlight here and discuss, and I'd love your thoughts on them, would be in material science, for example, battery chemistry. We all care a lot about getting more renewable energy into the grid. It's very difficult to do that, though, without better storage. We know that there are choke points with lithium, choke points that are geopolitical in nature and sourcing choke points as well. And so we need to move beyond these initial chemistries, but you're talking about a combinatorial runaway to explore the landscape of the periodic table to make new battery chemistries. Thoughts on that, Steve, from your point of view?
No, absolutely. The scale of exploration that we need to do to figure out where the new chemistries exist that we can leverage for mission purposes, and yet these new chemistries may be more supply chain friendly to us than the current options out there, is a very important and very strategic initiative for the United States as a country as a whole. And that's not going to be done without a computational platform like the one that you are building or demonstrating that relies on quantum techniques, relies on AI techniques, relies on the latest and greatest hardware. We have to bring those things together to do these simulations, these computations, these explorations to identify these new chemistries, because we've outsourced certain materials, certain manufacturing, and certain energy sources to adversaries that can use their control over those capabilities to choke us. Now, Jack, I have a question for you. As these types of new emerging technologies become more critical to the defense and intelligence community, how do we increase the technical sophistication of the workforce in these communities so that they can understand the potential better and take more advantage of them more quickly as they do emerge?
It's a very fundamental question. It's a question we dedicate a lot of time and resources to. We've set up a pro bono philanthropic arm of SandBoxAQ, SandBoxAQ EDU, and it's not just for universities. It's actually more than half our focus is on upskilling the workforce that's in the workplace today, be it in the government sector, be it in the private sector. Now, I would highlight, Steve, three buckets of individuals, three cohorts of individuals that we focus on, because they each need very different materials and very different curricula given their various constraints. The first would be the C-suite, the leadership, again, either in a DoD or IC context or in the private sector context. We have found that you cannot throw a 10-week course on Coursera with lots of coding, at folks at that level. It's just simply not going to be a very good fit. And what really people are looking for at the C-suite level and the secretary level, across agencies and departments, is the key conceptual takeaways and understanding of frameworks, how to put in context a new announcement about a new AI development, a new quantum development, how to put that in context. The first message we have on AI is that AI is not just about generative AI. Generative AI is wonderful, and we and many others participated in doing this. I've been building neural networks for many, many years. 1991 is my first neural network, so been around for a while building out neural networks and deep learning. Then we didn't have deep learning, of course, because our computation wouldn't supply it, but we had some neural networks nonetheless. The point is that we need to enable our C-suites and our leaderships in government to understand that generative AI is one piece of a much larger AI picture. And similarly on the quantum side, that quantum computing, which gets 90% of the attention, and we're excited about quantum computing and moving it along, we also need to look at quantum cyber, quantum safe cybersecurity, which hopefully we'll get to in a minute, quantum communications, quantum sensors, very important technology as well. So basically what we found is we need to give the C-suite a framework to have context for all the announcements that they see coming out. The second cohort will be the program managers, be it at an agency of the government or be it in a large company. And then, of course, the actual engineers, PhDs, the people who are often coding and building the actual products themselves. We've put out now YouTube channels and other channels to provide engineers with deeper curriculum. In fact, many universities now have taken that up and are incorporating that into their curriculum as well. So 3 cohorts. Context setting, we found, is the critical aspect. Instead of just throwing a lot of mumbo jumbo facts at people, can we give people a framework?
Yeah. So we are running out of time here, and we absolutely should not leave this conversation without talking about quantum safe cybersecurity. So, what are you guys working on there?
Well, I think it's a critical issue. Again, it's a dual use issue. It's both civilian sector and public sector. We need to address this. This is a critical challenge for all of us listening in today, and for yourself and myself, Steve. And our two organizations have been collaborating on this very, very important issue. The fact remains that before even we get to the quantum safe issue, one of the reasons why there's still so many breaches, be it on the public or private sector side, is that we need to move to a zero trust architecture, ZTA as it's known in the biz. And ZTA says, assume that the attackers break through your outer wall. You've got to just assume that that's going to happen. With that as in mind, we need to make each file, each application, each key management system, each library, its own fortress. And to do that, we need to use an AI-driven, systematic approach that can look at millions of files in a large enterprise, be it government agency or be it in the private sector, and analyze for its encryption technology. What is encrypting that file with 100 million social security numbers? What is encrypting that file with proprietary top secret information in a government agency? What we find, before we even get to the quantum piece in a minute, is that often, for example, a password file might be using a hashing protocol such as SHA-1 or MD5. Protocols, as you know, Steve, that were broken in 2000 and 2009, respectively, and not broken by a quantum computer, but broken by a simple laptop. And so then we turn to the quantum issue, where we know for certain quantum computers ultimately will crack the public key cryptography protocols we use today, be it RSA, be it ECC, elliptic curve cryptography. And for that, and here's the good news, a great shining example of government doing great work with itself and partners is the work of NIST. I want to really give kudos in this podcast here today to the great folks at NIST and other folks in other agencies in the IC that supported NIST in this respect to run a 7-year process that just came to a good conclusion last year to analyze 82 different potential candidates for a replacement for RSA, for public key cryptography encryption, and in fact came out with Crystal's Kyber for the KEM. KEMs are used to transmit keys across the internet, and of course, looking at a number of candidates for digital signature as well. That standardization process will take about another year to wrap up, but tremendous work on the part of public and private individuals coming together in a peer-reviewed, open process across many countries, allowing the community to come together and say, we now have a roadmap of a quantum safe standard for replacing RSA. Major accomplishment in the last number of years, just happened July 5th last year. And so now with that in hand, we can do both discovery, and we at SandBoxAQ provide AI-driven discovery tools to analyze millions of files and tag them for triage movement to quantum safe encryption, but also remediation. Remediation will not be a simple process. It will take years to get all these files and protocols into the new standards. But that's the work of the next few years, Steve.
Well, that's fantastic. I think that's a great place to end. But I just want to reiterate your point. I think it was a great public-private partnership action by the government to run that study or that competition, if you will. And I think it will really help benefit a lot of different companies, a lot of different efforts in this area. I'd like to thank the audience today for tuning in to the episode of The Intersection. Please make sure to subscribe to the IQT Podcast so you don't miss out on future content, and leave us a review or comment to let us know what you think or what content you'd be interested to see us cover in future podcasts. Also, encourage you to check out IQT's website at www.iqt.org to explore more content about cutting-edge technology to support and deliver insights and capabilities essential for national security mission impact. Jack, thank you for taking the time here today. If people want to find out more information about what you and your company are up to, is there any place on the web you want to point them to?
Sure. I think we'll probably provide the URL, SandBoxAQ.com. We also have a number of YouTube channels and books and other materials, pro bono curriculums that people can use to upskill themselves and their communities. And we encourage people to reach out to us and reach out to the many companies now working at the frontier of these technologies to impact both the national defense and security as well as critical industries in the private sector as well.
Great. Well, Jack, thank you for joining us at the intersection, and we'll talk to everyone next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.